The Great Wall of China is one of the most iconic structures in human history. Stretching over 13,000 miles across mountains, deserts, and plains, it attracts millions of tourists every year. It's a symbol of Chinese strength, ingenuity, and determination. There's just one problem: it didn't work. That's right. The Great Wall, this massive project that took over 2,000 years to build and cost countless lives, failed at the one job it was built to do: keep invaders out. In fact, China was conquered multiple times by the very people the wall was supposed to stop. So what went wrong? How did the world's most famous wall become history's most expensive failure? This is the story of ambition, engineering, and why sometimes the biggest solutions don't solve anything at all. The dream behind the wall. Let's go back to the beginning. The Great Wall wasn't built all at once by one emperor who woke up and said, "You know what? Let's build a really, really long wall." It was built in sections over centuries by different Chinese dynasties, each facing the same nightmare: invasion from the north. To the north of China lay the steppes, vast grasslands stretching from Mongolia to Central Asia. And living on those steppes were nomadic peoples, riders and warriors who could shoot arrows from horseback while moving at full speed. These weren't just raiders. They were some of the most effective military forces in history. The Xiongnu, the Mongols, the Manchus. These groups didn't farm or build cities. They moved with their herds, lived in tents, and when they needed resources, they took them from settled civilizations like China. For Chinese emperors, this was a constant problem. You'd build up your farms, your cities, your wealth, and then boom, horsemen would come thundering in, loot everything, and disappear back into the steppes before your army could respond. It was like playing whack-a-mole, except the moles had horses and composite bows. The first major attempt to solve this was during the Qin Dynasty around 221 BC. Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the guy famous for the terracotta army, connected and extended earlier defensive walls built by various states. His vision was simple: build a barrier so big, so long, so imposing, that nomadic invaders would take one look and say, "You know what? Let's go raid someone else." The construction was brutal. Hundreds of thousands of workers, many of them forced laborers, and prisoners, spent decades hauling stone, packing earth, and building watchtowers. The death toll was horrific. Estimates suggest hundreds of thousands died during construction. There's an old Chinese legend about a woman named Ming Dynasty, whose husband died building the wall. She cried so hard that a section of the wall collapsed, revealing his bones. But here's the thing. The wall wasn't just about the physical barrier. It was about the idea. It represented the boundary between civilization and barbarism, between the ordered world of Chinese agriculture and the chaotic world of the nomadic steppes. The wall said, "This is China. Everything on this side is ours. Everything on that side is not." Why walls don't stop determined invaders. Now, after the wall was built, towers were manned, soldiers patrolled, signal fires were ready to warn of approaching enemies. It should have worked, right? But wrong. The first problem was simple. The wall was too long. At its maximum extent, we're talking about over 13,000 miles of fortification. To defend that effectively, you'd need hundreds of thousands of soldiers stationed along its length at all times. And here's the kicker. You couldn't just put them there and forget about them. They needed food, weapons, supplies, and replacements. The logistics were a nightmare. Chinese dynasties tried. During the Ming Dynasty, which built most of the wall we see today, there were supposed to be 1 million soldiers defending the northern border. But maintaining that force was incredibly expensive. When the government ran out of money or faced internal problems, garrisons went unpaid, towers went unmanned, and huge sections of the wall became decorative rather than defensive. The second problem was even more fundamental. Walls only work if you can't go around them or through them. And nomadic armies were really, really good at finding ways to do both. See, the wall had gates. It had to, because China needed trade with the north. The Silk Road passed through some of these gates. Merchants needed to come and go, and wherever there's a gate, there's an opportunity. Nomadic leaders would sometimes dress as traders, bribe guards, or just wait until a gate was opened for legitimate traffic and then rush through. But the most common tactic was even simpler: going around. The wall had to end somewhere. It couldn't extend infinitely in both directions. Nomadic armies would just ride to the ends of the wall, or to sections that were less defended, and go around. It's like locking your front door but leaving all your windows open. The third problem was corruption. Guards were supposed to defend the wall, but they were often poorly paid and far from home. Bribes worked wonders. A nomadic leader with enough silver or goods could simply pay the guards to look the other way. There are records of entire sections of the wall being sold to raiding parties for the right price. The Mongols. When the wall met its match. If you want to see the Great Wall's biggest failure, look no further than the Mongols. In the early 1200s, Genghis Khan and his armies swept across Asia, building the largest contiguous land empire in history. And guess what stood in their way? The Great Wall of China. Did it stop them? Not even close. The Mongols were masters of siege warfare and psychological intimidation. When they approached a section of the wall, they didn't just throw themselves at it. They studied it. They found weak points, bribed defenders, used spies, and waited for the right moment. In 1211, Genghis Khan led his forces against the Ming Dynasty, which controlled northern China. The Great Wall was supposed to protect the Jin. Instead, Mongol forces found mountain passes, bribed garrison commanders, and simply went around heavily defended sections. Within years, they'd conquered everything north of the Yellow River. But the Mongols didn't just go around the wall. Sometimes they went through it. Mongol armies would besiege a gate, and when defenders inside the wall refused to open it, they'd use captured Chinese engineers to build siege weapons. They'd bombard the gates until they broke, or they'd scale the walls with ladders and ropes. By 1279, Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, had conquered all of China and established the Ming Dynasty. The Mongols didn't just defeat the wall, they ruled from behind it. The very structure built to keep them out became part of their empire. That's not a failure, that's an ironic disaster. The Manchus, the final insult. If the Mongol conquest was embarrassing, what happened in the 1600s was downright humiliating. The Manchus, a semi-nomadic people from northeast of the wall, did something even worse. They didn't break through the wall. They were invited in. By the early 1600s, China was ruled by the Ming Dynasty, the same dynasty that had spent enormous resources rebuilding and extending the wall. But the Ming were falling apart. Corruption was rampant. Peasant rebellions were breaking out across the country. The treasury was empty. In 1644, a rebel leader named Li Zicheng captured Beijing. The last Ming emperor hanged himself in shame. At this point, the Ming general Wu Sangui was defending the eastern end of the Great Wall at a fortress called Shanhai Pass. He had a choice: surrender to the rebels or ask for help from the Manchus. He chose the Manchus. Wu Sangui opened the gates of the Great Wall and invited the Manchu army through to help defeat the rebels. The Manchus came in, defeated Li Zicheng, and then kept going. They conquered all of China and established the Qing dynasty, which would rule for the next 267 years. Think about that. The Great Wall's most defended gate was opened from the inside by a Chinese general. The wall didn't fail because it was weak. It failed because human decisions, politics, and desperation made it irrelevant. The real problem: walls can't fix everything. Here's the uncomfortable truth about the Great Wall. It was never going to work because it was trying to solve the wrong problem. Chinese emperors thought the problem was nomadic invasions. Build a big enough wall, and the invasions stop. But the real problem was the fundamental difference between nomadic and settled societies. Nomads needed resources. When droughts hit the steppes or winters were harsh, they had two choices: starve or raid. A wall doesn't change that equation. What might have worked better? Trade and diplomacy. And to be fair, Chinese dynasties did try this. They signed treaties with nomadic leaders, sent princesses to marry khans, and established tribute systems where nomads received silk, grain, and goods in exchange for peace. When these policies worked, the wall wasn't needed. When they failed, the wall didn't help. The dynasties that thrived were the ones that combined military strength with smart diplomacy. The dynasties that fell were the ones that relied too heavily on either walls or armies alone. There's also a darker truth. Some of the worst invasions happened not because the wall failed, but because China was already falling apart from the inside. The Mongols conquered a China divided by war between the Jin and Song dynasties. The Manchus walked through a wall defended by a collapsing Ming Dynasty. The wall couldn't protect China from itself. The Great Wall's legacy, symbol over substance. So if the Great Wall failed at its job, why is it still celebrated? Because somewhere along the way it stopped being about defense and started being about identity. The Great Wall became a symbol of Chinese determination, resilience, and civilization. It represented the idea that China would go to extraordinary lengths to protect itself. Even if it didn't always work, the attempt mattered. During the 20th century, when China was being invaded and humiliated by foreign powers, the Great Wall took on new meaning. It became a reminder of a time when China was strong enough to build something monumental. Mao Zedong famously said, "He who has not climbed the Great Wall is not a true man." It was about national pride, not military effectiveness. Today, millions of tourists visit the Great Wall every year. They see it as one of the wonders of the world, and it is. As an engineering achievement, it's incredible. As a symbol, it's powerful. But as a military defense, it was an expensive, labor-intensive failure. Lessons from the Wall. The Great Wall teaches us something important. Grand solutions don't always work. Sometimes the biggest, most expensive projects fail because they're based on flawed assumptions. China assumed that a physical barrier could solve a complex geopolitical problem. They assumed that pouring resources into one massive project would bring security. But security doesn't come from walls. It comes from stable government, economic strength, and smart diplomacy. Ironically, modern China doesn't rely on walls anymore. They've built the world's second-largest economy, the largest standing army, and a nuclear arsenal. They've embraced trade and globalization. The Great Wall is now a tourist attraction, a beautiful relic of a strategy that didn't work. But let's not forget what it cost. Hundreds of thousands died building it. Dynasties spent fortunes maintaining it. And in the end, every major invasion China feared happened anyway. The Mongols came, the Manchus came. The wall watched them pass. The wall that couldn't. The Great Wall of China is a monument to human ambition and the limits of that ambition. It's proof that you can build something massive, something that lasts thousands of years and still fail at your primary goal. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the wall's failure teaches us more than its success ever could. It teaches us that there are no easy answers to complex problems. That physical barriers can't replace political wisdom. That sometimes the most impressive thing humans can build is still not enough. The Great Wall failed at keeping invaders out, but it succeeded at something else. It became eternal. Dynasties rose and fell, empires came and went, but the wall remained, a silent witness to the fact that history doesn't care about our grand plans. The dragon built a wall to protect itself, but the wall couldn't stop the wolves from coming. In the end, China survived not because of the wall, but despite it. They survived through adaptation, resilience, and the understanding that no structure, no matter how great, can replace the need to evolve. If this story fascinated you, then you'll enjoy the video on your screen right now. Click on it, and see you there. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to keep watching.